Hey, how's it going? So I realized something kind of crazy. I've never made an elderberry tincture video. I don't know why. I don't know how that slipped past. I've made just about every other type of tincture video under the sun, so I guess we're gonna knock that off the list today. So, if you haven't guessed, I'm here to show you how to make an elderberry tincture. This is so crazy simple. So if you've just gathered elderberries, regardless if they're the black variety or the blue variety or whatever you're working with, the first thing I want you to do, and you're watching this video to learn how, is to take your berries that you probably haven't painstakingly picked off yet, and I want you to throw them in the freezer. Just hear me out here. If you throw them in the freezer, if you've got a deep freezer, in about 24 hours they'll be good to go. If you're using like your above the fridge freezer, give it 2 days because it's not as cold. What'll happen is, see all my berries here? I picked this amount, I should say I de-stemmed this amount in about a minute. You take out your clusters out of the freezer, and I've got a video on my YouTube that shows you how to do it, and you just do this like you're tickling it. And all your berries will just fall off. So once they freeze, they come right off the stems, and it's super easy. Some people, you know, they say, oh, just use a fork or this or that. I'm like, nope, just freeze it. And I'll talk to you about what's kind of cool about freezing it here while I show you how to make it. So basically what you're going to need is your elderberries, some 100-proof vodka, a jar, and to prevent some frustrations, if you happen to have one of these on hand, a canning funnel is handy. You don't have to go buy one if you don't have one. You could just, you know, be careful about getting them in the jar. And I'm just going to take my funnel, my jar, and these berries that I just de-stemmed. I'm waiting for it all to come out in one clump because you know it's going to... I'm pretty much going to fill my jar all the way up. Now, when you're picking a jar to use, make sure it's one that you can fill all the way up. If you have less berries, use a smaller jar. If you have more berries and you're like, oh, just use a bigger jar. But whatever it is, make sure it's one that you can pretty much fill up, right? So I've put my berries in the jar. Now I'm using 100-proof vodka. Now we use 100-proof vodka because 100-proof means it's 50% water, 50% alcohol. And when you use 100-proof vodka, should have had this top popped off already, that means that you're also getting her water-soluble properties alongside of her alcohol-soluble properties. And that is super important when we're making a tincture. And one of the reasons that I only use fresh plant matter for the most part when I'm making tinctures is because I want those water-soluble properties. It makes for a much more well-rounded, balanced tincture versus when you use like 190 proof, which is grain alcohol. Doesn't mean it's made with grain. It means that it's 95% or above alcohol content. You don't get any of the water-soluble properties, and then you have to do all this math, ironically, to bring it back to 50% water content, which makes it safer, well, safer for ingestion. I don't personally work with grain alcohol at all. It's so much easier because my tincture's already done. There's no math to do after that. You literally just watch me make a quart of elderberry tincture in what, like a minute? And in 6 to 8 weeks after I let it sit, it'll be done. So one of the cool things that I'm going to jabber about now that you learned how to make an elderberry tincture, why I like to freeze the berries. You know how, like imagine this was a jar full of water and berries, or just a jar full of water or whatever, and you stuck it in the freezer. What do you think would happen to this jar? The water would expand and it wouldn't have any room, so it would break the jar, right? Some of us have gone through that experience before. Something frozen, like even a pop, like when you put a pop or a soda, whatever you call it, wherever you're from. I'm in Northeast Oregon. You put it in the freezer and it explodes. It explodes because the can is airtight, but what's happening is it's expanding as it freezes. The water content is expanding. All of that to say, when you freeze your elderberries, there's a chicken right there. I just want you to know that's why I'm slightly distracted. I'm like, hello, chicken. Here, lady, you can have these berries. Here. There you go. When you freeze your berries, what happens is they expand, right? They expand because of that water content in them. You're like, well, what's the big deal? Well, the thing is that's happening on a cellular level. So the way a tincture kind of works, just to nerd out here for a second, is that the alcohol is getting in on a cellular structure and breaking down those cell walls to extract the herbal properties that we're after in a very small nutshell, that's how that works. So what happens when you freeze these berries is it breaks open that cellular structure from freezing, just like how the jar expands, the water in the berry expands and bursts open all those cells. So when you make a tincture with frozen elderberries, which is the preferred way I do it, and honestly how I pretty much always do it, you really get a nice potent tincture. I mean, it's fine if you're using fresh too. It does the same thing. It might take a few weeks longer, but I find around 4 to 5 weeks out of the 8 weeks that I'm letting it set, it is remarkably more infused than if I had used fresh berries. I mean, look at the dark color of it already. You know, and so I really like that. Now, another thing I want to touch on is there's some fear going around about elderberry right now. There's quite a bit of misinformation that got put out there during the whole what's going on in the world right now, and people all, you know, really worried that if they take elderberry, it's going to make them sicker. Fly just totally nailed me in the head. But let me just explain how elderberry works and how that misconception kind of got, it was a meme and it went just wrong, you know. So the way elderberry works is she really stimulates your immune system by allowing basically your white blood cells and your NK cells, which is just a type of white blood cell, and NK stands for natural killer. It's literally what it is called. They communicate better, right? So like if a virus or a bacteria, mainly a virus, gets into your nose or your mouth or any, you know, orifice it's trying to come through, basically elderberry has the ability to keep these little soldier type blood cells by your nose. They can radio, imagine there's little radios inside of you. They can radio that there's an invader faster. It basically ramps up your immune system's ability to communicate. And that's amazing, unless you're already really sick and you haven't been taking elderberry. Because do you know that almost nobody dies from a virus? Nobody has ever died from a virus. What you actually die from is your immune system's own response to the virus in an effort to try to kill the virus and or a secondary infection. But the virus itself doesn't kill you. So when you get the flu or something and you're puking or you're shivering or you're fevering, your body is actually causing that to happen. So with elderberry's ability to ramp up our immune system's ability to communicate, it's like giving your immune system a semi or fully automatic weapon. Right? It's like, oh, now we can really attack. So if you haven't been taking elderberry preemptively, or you wait until you're really sick to start taking it, what can happen is you can have like a cytotoxic storm, basically, where your own immune system is going to make you really sick because you just gave it the power to be stronger when it's already kind of fucking killing you. So people panic about it, but elderberry's been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and the trick to not having elderberry make you get sicker is to use her as preventative. Use her before you get sick. Use her during cold and flu season. I take her year-round personally because she's also really good for anti-inflammatory and just a worn down, stressed out body and allergies and all kinds of stuff. She goes so much more beyond immune system support. But if you start getting a cold, don't be afraid that if you drink a cup of elderberry tea or use some tincture that it's going to just kill you dead. When it really hurts is, let's say you've got like the swine flu or something like that, something really nasty, right? And you've been sick for like 3 or 4 days and you're so sick that you're like, I really want to go to the hospital or something like that, or you're just like suffering. Don't start taking elderberry then. You can take it when you first start getting sick or before you get sick, but don't wait until you're already really sick and then taking her. Because what happens, again, is she ramps up your immune system's response, and that can make you dangerously ill because, again, and I can't stress this enough, it's your immune system that is making you feel like you want to die, not the virus itself. It's the reaction to the virus within your body. Okay, so the next thing, which has kind of been buried under a lot of people's current fear, but used to be the thing that people freak out about, is they're like, she's got precursors to cyanide in her. Kind of. They think that you can get, like, she's poisonous. And for a long time, I didn't correct people because nobody ever harvests the elderberry, so I didn't have to, like, have competition with other humans and the wildlife. But this year, I'm watching people go in places that I would never gather from and just like ripping them before they're even ripe, and you know, they're afraid and they're trying to get this plant ally in there with them. But a lot of people freak out that she's got glycosides in her. Okay, well, glycosides are in almost every plant, including almost every fruit, especially every stone fruit, and that means like peaches, nectarines, cherry, anything that has a pit in it, anything that has a seed in it has glycoside in it. Glycoside has the potential to turn into cyanide. If you are literally trying to kill yourself with it and you somehow have access to like pounds and pounds and pounds, and if the violent of seeds, and if the violent diarrhea and vomiting somehow didn't prevent you from eating more, sure, then you could hurt yourself with elderberry. So, or if you decided to eat a bunch of her leaves or her bark or her roots, there's a lot in her roots. But basically, glycoside is harmless. It passes through your body every time you've ever eaten. Drink apple juice. It's a thing, okay? But it is killed off by any type of cooking. And you actually have to ingest the seed that has it. So like when you make a tincture, which counts as cooking, it basically neutralizes the glycoside. But even if it didn't, as long as you're not ingesting the seed within the elderberry, and even if you did, as long as you're not consistently eating it on an every day, every hour basis, it's not going to be able to build up high enough levels in your body to turn into cyanide because your body processes it out. So that's why you have to be eating it just constantly to get sick from these berries. So if you don't get every little piece of stem off of your berries when you're making a tincture, don't freak out. And if you're going to make like a tea, don't worry about it. The drying process that you did to use the berries in a tea killed off the glycoside. If you're just going to make a jam, well, actually it would be a jelly. You don't want to really make a jam because you don't want to be ingesting the seeds necessarily. But then even again, if you're cooking it down, it's going to kill off all the glycoside in the seeds anyways. It neutralizes it. And I know that I'm just doing a brain dump right now, so let me take a breath and make sure that I'm not just overwhelming anybody. But you don't need to fear elderberry, you just have to understand how she works. And most of the time when you see people that are like, oh, she's dangerous, oh, she's just this or that, really it's a symptom of them not understanding who she is or how she works in the body. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's important that we're open to learning about what's going on and where is this fear coming from. You know, I see that a lot in Western herbalism. People are like, oh, that plant is dangerous because of this. I'm like, well, why? Like, I know why a lot of plants are dangerous, but you have to make sure that when you are deciding something as benign as elderberry, which is a food, is dangerous, to ask yourself, where did I get that fear from? Is it founded in misunderstanding? Is it founded in just passed on hearsay? Because elderberry really wants to be in your life. She is a fantastic ally for so many things. Now, if you haven't harvested your elderberries yet, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. If you live somewhere that it gets kind of cold or you get frost, wait until it gets nice and cold. Wait until those berries look boozy and that bird hopping around on the ground might be kind of drunk from eating the berries, because that's when they're really potent, that's when they're really medicinal. The tree is gearing up for winter and she is pumping all the nutrients and everything she can into these berries because they are her children. The berry's purpose, the fruit's purpose is to feed the seed to turn into another tree, right? So it's kind of like a little womb if you think about it. And so when you pick them when they're really nice and firm still, regardless of the variety, and they're not, it hasn't been cold at all, it's like August or whatever, they just really aren't quite ready. These are actually some from last year that we had in the freezer because we harvest a lot and we freeze them, and that way we always have them on hand. But we here in Northeast Oregon, there are people gathering elderberries all over. I'm not going out to get them until the end of September, which we're about to now, but probably even into the first, second week of October, when up on the mountain, when I can go up higher in elevation. There's been a good amount of cold nights in the 40 and 30 degree range, and you know, the birds have had their fill at that point in time. I'm not having to fight the wildlife or worry about taking too much, which is unethical because it is an important food source for a lot of birds throughout the winter. But yeah, and plus nobody really goes up to the colder areas, right? A lot of people don't think about gathering when it's getting cold out and it's not as fun to be out and about, right? But like if you wait until then, she's way more medicinal. Now, if you are wanting to make jams or jellies or something like that, I always say that wrong. It should just be jelly, yeah. Or tea. You can get her sooner than that if you're using it for cooking. She's a little bit sweeter, a little less boozy, but again, I just like to wait for as long as I can before I get her. I've even found, like, early November, I've even found clusters that are still good. People get really freaked out when they see that a berry is wrinkled. They're like, oh, you know, but it's just like rose hips. They're actually better once the frost has hit them for a little bit, or at least cooler temperatures. So that's my rant about elderberry tincture. Basically now, after you spew all that information out, you're gonna put a label on there so you know who she is, and this one isn't gonna stick. No, I lied. She's on there. Nope, look, it's slippery because my jar is cold, so you might have to wipe the condensation off. Here, let me use my skirt. And then I can... Nope, I'm just slapping the jar. So put a label on it, put it in a cool, dark place for 6 to 8 weeks. When it's done sitting, you strain the berries out and then use as needed. I get questions about dosages pretty often. This isn't pharmaceutical medicine. Every body is different. Go check out my Let's Talk All About Tinctures video. I talk about how you figure out what works best for your body. It's not complicated. It's just easier for me to direct you to one video than talk about it every time. And then, you know, straining it is as easy as putting it through like a mesh sieve or one of those nut milk bags or anything like that. And this tincture is not going to go bad if you forget about it, if you forget to strain it. If it's been a year and a half, 3, 5, 10, you're fine. As long as this lid is tight, you're good to go. Now, once you put them in the dropper bottles, you've got about 5 years because a little bit of evaporation can happen through those like dropper tops. But when they're in a jar like this, they last forever. And just like vodka doesn't go rotten on your shelf, this tincture isn't going to go rotten on your shelf either. So I think I covered everything. Probably forgot at least one thing. Oh, the most important thing for you to remember is that you are absolutely smart enough to do this. No matter what you believe, no matter what society has told you, no matter what Western herbalism has made you feel like, you are smart enough to do this, and you do not in any way, shape, or form need to pay somebody thousands of dollars to learn safe, simple herbalism. You just have to be curious, trust in yourself, get out on the land, be like, oh, who are you? Oh, it's Teasel. You know, learn these plants, get to know them one at a time, what's in your area, and within a matter of few years, you will be absolutely blown away by all the things you know about all the plant allies around you just by simply doing the work. You don't need to take years and years and years and years before you even get out on the land like a lot of herbalism courses like to tell people. Get out there and start making and learn by doing. You learn by doing. It's amazing, people. It's just how your brain is wired, most of us anyhow. So if you like my videos where I give all kinds of information, do brain dumps, bounce all over the place, you know, we'll probably get told that I'm either, you know, way out this or that, or definitely on caffeine. I always get accused of it when I get going, and it's fine. It's just who I am. If you like me being a human, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications. If you're watching me on YouTube, come find me on Instagram. If you're watching me on Instagram, come find me on YouTube. I share all kinds of information on both platforms, and make sure to share. It really helps get this information out there. All of these things I'm really grateful for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, okay? Bye.